Hello friends, it's Cindy Brumbaugh from CindyLeeBDesigns.com, independent Stampin' Up demonstrator. Today I'd like to show you this easel card I made using a new stamp set in the holiday catalog. It's the Beautiful Baubles bundle. It uses the Beautiful Baubles stamp set that has a nice large ornament and then these hanging ornaments here, some really neat sentiments here, deck the halls, hope you find beauty in the details of the season, and your Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We're going to be using that stamp set and we're going to be using the dies called the Detailed Baubles Thinlits. These have a nice ornament, hanging ornament. It has the ornaments that are cut out with this image here that we're going to be using, and then has a lovely die here that cuts out like a doily, like an intricate doily that you can frame many different stamp sets you already have. So we're going to be using the Beautiful Baubles bundle on this card. And we're going to be using this gorgeous paper called All Is Bright. And in this particular designer series paper, there are more realistic photos of things in their patterns. And there are two different, as you can see, they almost look exactly the same, but this one has Christmas lights on it, and this one has Christmas bulbs. But I took them because they both have the red and the green and the glimmers of silver in it, or gold actually in it. So we're going to be using one of these designer papers on our card here for the focal point of the front of the card. And then I'm going to be using the gold glimmer paper. The new glimmer paper is just beautiful. You don't have all those little pieces of glitter everywhere, like my friend Marty said gets everywhere. So we're going to be using the gold glimmer paper on this just to outline our designer paper and to outline our image on here. And we're going to be using real red cardstock, and we're going to be using a 11 by 4 1/4, and we're going to score it at 2 3/4 and 5 1/2. So we're just going to put it into our scoring tool and go at 2 3/4 and 5 1/2 on the 11-inch side. And then that's going to give us our easel effect. And then we're going to need a piece of real red that is the piece that becomes the easel that sits up against the pivoting part. Well, actually it's the pivoting part. So in that piece is actually just a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of real red, a quarter sheet of your cardstock. And then the inside of our card has a Very Vanilla. And what I did, usually I do white with red, and I save the Cherry Cobbler Very Vanilla combo. But on this card, I really liked having the gold with the Very Vanilla. So you could, do it with either color, but I did prefer the Very Vanilla on this one. So this is going to be a 4-inch by 5 1/4 inch piece of Very Vanilla, another 1/4 inch size of your cardstock. And don't worry about writing down any of the measurements. You can find them all on the blog post for this card, and I'll have all the colors, the materials, the supplies, any things that I used on this card. So what we're going to do is start out by putting together the front of the card. Okay, so we'll set aside the card actually for right now, and then we'll just work on getting our focal point done. So we've got that 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece, and what I did was I cut down my designer series paper to 5 1/2 by 2. And what I actually like to do is have a pair of scissors handy to show you a little trick in a second here. So what I'm going to do is instead of using large piece of gold glimmer paper, I'm just going to fool the eye and only use strips, and then it actually saves a little bit on your glimmer paper. So I would suggest when you're doing glimmer paper that you do use glue for that, because the glimmer paper needs a little bit. Now the new glimmer paper, which is great, you can almost get by with just using your tape runner. So what I'm doing is just putting some glue on the back of my designer paper, and then I can just adhere my designer paper to my strip of gold. And then I've got a nice border, and then I just want I want it to stick. You can't be too quick with this one. You have to be a little patient with glue. So we'll get that stuck down, and then we're just going to put the same amount of border on the other edge of the designer paper. And then, as I said, just give it a little second there to adhere. And you're going to notice my little trick here. Since I was using 12 by 12 paper and I knew I had enough room for a little bit of overhang, I went ahead and cut my designer paper just a little bit longer than I needed. That way, if it didn't match up perfectly, because sometimes I use my stamping trimmer, sometimes I use my paper cutter, and sometimes I wiggle my hands, sometimes my eyes are tired at night, and sometimes it's just not exactly perfect. So if I make it a little bit longer, as my girls in class will say, you can just snip it off there. So what we're going to do is just adhere this down. Now you can use your tape runner for that, no problem. You just got to make sure that you're using it the correct way with the protective cover. And then just put a couple bits of there. Okay, so then we're going to adhere that onto the front of our card. I used about a 1/2 inch border on the left side. And then I just make sure that I've got about equal portion, so it's straight. And then as you'll see, there's a little overhang here. And what I do with that is I just trim it down. That's what I needed those snips for. So what I do is I just now can trim off that excess. And now it's got a perfect border on it. Okay, so there we go. So now that is already done. That was quick and wow. So now we're going to work on this focal point. I use my layering squares for this. I used the largest layering scallop and I cut out a piece of gold. And as you can see on the part that holds up the easel, I have some little pieces of gold here. And who knows where this framelit came from? Ha! It comes from the lakeside framelits, you know, with the pond, the Lily Pond Lake. So I used that framelit and then the smaller framelit. So there you go, the smaller framelit. And I just decided before I adhered my image to there, I would just cut out that piece. So of course, again, I'm using my supplies wisely. So what I did is I cut out that gold piece. And then I took the next size that layers onto here, that layers onto your scalloped square, and I did that in garden green. Let's find that little guy here. And we can go ahead and glue him on. Alrighty. And then I just glued him onto the glimmer scallop. Has a nice little tight border there. And then I had to cut out another square that fits inside the garden green square from the layering squares. And I cut that out. Now I'm going to show you how I stamp these ornaments so that they turned out perfect every time. So what I did is I took my Stamparatus and I put my ornaments here on the plate, and then I just put that piece, the square that I cut out, and then I just inked this up with garden green, and then I pressed on my Stamparatus, and then I got a perfect green set of ornaments. So then the next thing I did is I took a piece of Very Vanilla and I inked this up in the garden green and I stamped it. Then I turned the same piece around so that the blank side was here, and I cleaned this off. I inked it up in red and I stamped it. And what I ended up with, as you can see, is that. So I did the green and then I turned it around and did the red. There you go. I see I missed a little piece there, but this was just a sample anyhow. So after we have these ornaments, we got the die out from the stamp set Beautiful Baubles that coordinates with it, the detailed, and I just put those around the images, ran it through my Big Shot with the cutting sandwich, and then I did these ones as well. I probably turned them in my Big Shot, and so I cut them out, and then when I was done, I had all of my ornaments here. Now, when I first went to do this card, I thought I would just leave, you know, the green ones green and just add the red, but I really found that the card, you probably can't see it here, but the card really looked better when I had these popped up and these ones layered on top of the stamped image. It just gave it a little bit more texture to it or something. So that's how we're going to do it. So here's the image that we did with the Very Vanilla Square. And then I just looked at my ornaments. And of course I look at the ornaments that look the best. And then I decide how I'm going to, and it looks like I really like the green. Oh, and because my red, I can put the red here. So let's change it up from this one. This one was green, green, green. So I think what we might do is, I think I'm actually going to keep it the same because I probably thought that whole process out already. So what we're going to do is just line up the ornaments so that I have them correctly where I want them. And the green fancy one. Okay, so then I have these left over, and what can I do? Make another card and use these pieces on the next card. So what I did was I decided to put all the red ones flat on the image. So I just put some glue where the red ones go. Okay. And then I just matched them up nicely, making sure that my ornaments match up with the strings. Then I took the other red one and put down here. And just, there we go. Make sure he looks a little crooked. There we go. And then the red one here at the top. There we go. And then I popped up the green ones. And to pop up the green ones, I just use my dimensionals. Thankfully, these all have a wide enough space on them that I was able to easily not have to trim anything. But thankfully, we have the new mini dimensionals that work wonderfully in small, cramped spaces. So then we're going to do this guy. And see, you can't see it from the other side. And then we'll get that dimensional off of there. And we'll just put that ornament in place. And then we have our big ornament. One more dimensional. I actually went away to a wedding, to Tara and Jordan Bondi's wedding last weekend in Virginia. And I was getting into my suitcase and I found the backs of stamping dimensionals. They're everywhere. I didn't have any dimensionals with me on the trip, but somehow one of those things must have been on a shoe or something. So there we go. We have our image that's going to be adhered to our green here. And actually, I'm glad that the glue hasn't totally adhered yet because I have it a little crooked here. There we go. Okay, so then we just adhere our Very Vanilla to the green. When I originally made this card, I just put the Very Vanilla right on the gold, but it was just lacking something. So then I put that border of green around it and it just popped for me. So there we go. So that's going to be put onto this card as soon as I can get it off of my desk. And so then I just put it on the card with some dimensionals on the back. Don't forget when you adhere that, if you have a nice, beautiful, bold scallop square there, you're going to want to either die cut the border thing we're going to use, the sentiment framelit, or another thing I usually do, and my girls will say in their kits at stamping class, if I have a big piece that I'm using, I'll be popping out scallop circles, flowers, anything I can do to use up that precious real estate there. So what we're going to do is just take the dimensionals off of the back. Let's stick a little one in the middle too. Okay, and then what I did is I centered it just, not centered if you're not putting it right in the middle, I put it a little bit up from the middle. So there we go. We have the front of the card done. So to do the inside of the card where the easel is, the first thing I did was decorate the bottom. And I looked around for something fancy in another stamp set, and then I came to the conclusion that right there sitting before me were these cute little, I guess that you could call them snowflakes, or you could just call them little glimmer glitz things, little shiny things. So what I did is I used a Stampin' Spot, and I just decorated the bottom edge just to give it something to fill in. It just seemed a little bare down there. So I just filled in. I find using a Stampin' Spot makes it stamp so much easier. If your ink pad's a little juicy at the time, these little delicate detailed stamps sometimes can get some gook in the middle of them. And so if you just keep your paper pumpkin ones, or you can buy, now this one is a generic one I got from somewhere else and I just re-inked it, but ours have a white border on them and they're right in the catalog. You can order those. My friend Sally has made quite a collection with her Stampin' Spots. They're great. So the next thing we want to do is do our sentiment here, deck the halls. I love that, deck the halls. So what I did is I stamped it in garden green on a scrap of Very Vanilla, and then I used the larger sentiment that's in the Lakeside framelits, and I die cut it through my Big Shot. And la-da-da-da-da, we can just take that off now. Okay. Whoop. So that's going to be our image, but we need something to make that Very Vanilla pop. So what I did is I just cut a piece of garden green, which was 1 inch by 3 1/4, and it was going to pop off there. Because when you're making an easel card, you have to have some kind of mechanism to hold your portrait up. So you either find a flower or a sentiment, and I thought this was perfect. You put dimensionals on it and it just holds it up. So I played around with this to get the gold on the sides, and I put it on the back of the sentiment at first, and then I thought, boy, it would be much smarter and easier to just put it on the green and then adhere the Very Vanilla to the gold glimmer. So what I did is I'm going to put some adhesive, my snail here, on the edges of my green. Then I'm going to use my grid paper, and then I can just say I want it to go out to whatever dimension I want. You know, it could be easily, it's not really a measurement, you just want to have one place that you're looking at on both sides. So then I just put the gold down, and then I can adhere the sentiment. Believe me, when I was putting this one together, it was a lot harder, and then I came up, oh, that would be a lot easier to do. So, and I think actually, yeah, I'm just going to adhere it flat, just like I did on the other card. Sometimes I like to change it up when I do a video from the one I already did, but I just put some glue on the back of that, and of course, the glue is, has a little wiggle room on it, and then I'm able to get a good, let's see here. I'm stamping standing up today, so I have a better view of what I'm doing, and I think actually it's going to work okay. So there we go. We have the sentiment, but actually, as you can see, I have a little more space on this side, so with glue, you do have a little more wiggle room. I can just bring it over a little bit. A little more. Make sure my borders on both up and top are good. There we go. Just hold it there for a second for the glue to dry. And then I'm going to put some dimensionals on the back, and that'll create that easel effect. If you make an easel card, and feel free to send me a picture, because I love it when you guys send me pictures of cards that you've done. Okie dokie. So let's adhere this to the inside of the card. So here's the card that we did. And as you remember, we just scored it at 2 3/4 and 5 1/2. And then you just fold it back as if this was like, you know, the landscape here, but now we're going to be using it portrait size. So what you're going to do is adhere this inside. I haven't done a video for a couple weeks, so I'm a little bit disjointed here. Thank you for your patience. So here we go. We're going to put an equal amount around the bottom and the 2 sides. I've got those cute little twinkles. That's what I was thinking of. They're little twinkles down there. So what we're going to do is now we're going to adhere this. Now, if I turn this over and I put my adhesive on here, I might go down too far. So what I'm going to do is put my adhesive, and I am going to use glue because people like to play with fun folds. And that way, this is going to adhere well. Now, another trick I do is make sure that it's going the right way. And then when you go to put this together, you just line up the tops and the sides. And you can actually use your flat surface as a guide too. And then just make sure that it's flush here and on both sides. And there you have your easel card started. See how it makes that easel there? So simple. But now we have to put that mechanism in there. So we're going to just take our dimensionals off of our sentiment. And once again, using my grid paper as a guide, I'm just going to put my sentiment right in the inside of the card, and then when the recipient gets it, they can, well, you can't see that as well as I can. You can see that it sits on an easel here. You'll see in the pictures that I put on my blog what it looks like from the side. It's a little bit hard to see in the video, but it has an easel effect on it. And then what I like about this is the sentiment is down further, so you can write your message here, your Merry Christmas message. I was going to use the sentiment, the smaller sentiment here that comes with the card, except it just looked too little dinky up here compared to this big one. But I also played around with putting "Hope you find beauty in the details of the season" right down on the bottom here. So, but when I used the garden green on the red, it looked black, and this is green, so I just kind of left it that way. You might put a couple gold pearls there, and so you've got your easel card, just like that. It fits into an A2 sized envelope. If you have any questions about how to make this card, or you want to share any of the cards you've made, you can email me at cindyleeb@gmail.com. You can contact me at 724-323-2296 via text. I get a lot of texts from people showing me stuff that they've done. And I would also suggest that you take a look at this stamp set, because it is it's like a little hidden gem there in that holiday catalog. The beautiful baubles and the detailed baubles thinlits makes a cute easel card. There you go. Thanks for stopping by, friends.